Matt Leck, one of the guys on the team with me, said in the prep before, and I might be butchering it, but he said something to the effect of, it's a lot easier to deny something before your dad has died
Right.
or your friend has died. And,
That's right.
that's what's happening now in those states. And
That's right.
it's what happened in Brazil with Bolsonaro, basically with a really accelerated version of that process. So can you connect that to, and I want to make a distinction.
Mhm.
I think people on the left, I really do think, especially maybe because I do see a lot of a certain type of toxicity and absolutism on social media. So I think that some of the people initially that were complaining about the reopen, I think there was a small amount of them that we at least had to entertain the notion that this was a misdirected, there's no proper safety, social provision. So we literally need to work because there
Correct.
isn't a proper social provision. Rent is
Correct.
not being frozen and so on. And I thought it was very important to not just do the kind of coastal liberal, you guys are idiots thing.
Right.
And so I made that point. I took some flack for that. Now, at the same time, I see other people who are my brethren, everything that is anti-establishment is good. Not seeing that those reopen protests quickly devolved. Maybe they always were, but there was a complexity to them. You could read quotes from people saying, I can't pay the bill on my truck. I don't know what these people expect me to do.
Right.
Quickly, completely subsumed by the armed terrorism at the Michigan state legislature,
Mhm.
the reactionary conspiracism, and then again, the link that the Trump tweet was very coordinated with it, the money from the DeVos family. And so I'm wondering if you could elaborate as somebody who really understands social movement and formation, and I think is very good at making these kinds of distinctions so we could, frankly, not forget everybody's humanity at a certain level and think
Mhm.
about potential alliances. How did you sort of break that down and see that transition happen? And how important and how dangerous was it, that specific armed element of reopen?
So, as frequently happens, you and I are on the same page. Um, when these demonstrations started happening, Michael, I remember seeing on one of the nightly news programs someone, this woman, make this statement that I thought was so telling. She basically said, if the government isn't going to take care of us, then we have to work. And and I have given a number of speeches and talks since then. And I said, what she said was completely rational. And the thing is that for us on the left, we needed to have a response to that, which some people did, which was to point out that, as Bernie Sanders did, that the government did need to be taking care of people. There needed to be a guaranteed income during this crisis, health care, et cetera. And that people should never have been put in a position where they had to put their lives on the line, like the meat packers, and many of these retail workers. So I think your instincts were right. And some people on the left got it, and other people didn't. What subsequently happened was part of the machinations of the right and of Trump supporters, where they saw this as an opportunity to do a neo Tea Party. In some ways, I'd call it an armed Tea Party, and they flaunted the law, and were trying to make a series of points, including one about that I think actually about the November elections, i.e., that they are ready for the November elections, um, and and so the problem on our side is that we've got to understand that the right wing populists do have this armed wing. The right wing populists can be very influential to the extent to which they give people a target and they mobilize people. But they also can be influential because of their appeal to irrationalism. And so what changed a lot of this was the murder of George Floyd. And may he rest in peace. But the movement that emerged after that really just, it reminded me, Michael, of the impact of Occupy. That, up until Occupy, you had the sort of predominance of the Tea Party. Then all of a sudden, Occupy changed the entire discourse. And I think that we're seeing a lot of that right now, that these protests and rebellions have changed discourse in ways that are frankly quite remarkable. When you look at the great percentage of support, I mean, well over 50%. I mean, numbers that I've seen up like 70% of people supporting the protesters. So, so I think that you have that. But the other thing is, had this pandemic declined, I think that Trump would have been trying to take a victory lap right now.
Definitely.
And would have used this movement as a way of emphasizing his whole notion that all of these attacks on him that have been hoaxes. He's not going to be able to do that. I mean, even if things improve within the next month, there is something, the way he has handled this crisis has not simply been criminal, it's been beyond lunatic in proportion.
Everybody, I'll plug it again. Edward Luce wrote an in-depth account in the Financial Times 3-4 weeks ago, and with very, very well reported, with multiple Trump, insiders. And I think I have a lot of credibility as someone who's, obviously loathes Trump, but is not particularly fixated on his day-to-day machinations. Mm-hmm. That piece is extraordinary, and just everyone needs to read. And it's even worse than what you said. I was going to say it validates what you said. It's even worse when it's all laid out in the reporting. Mm-hmm. And it's completely not surprising. But unlike the gossip from a Bolton book, this is, this isn't various DC whatever. This is him, willfully jeopardizing life because of anxiety about, a minute-by-minute stock market profile, basically. I mean, not even like a clinical sociopathic calculation, mm-hmm. just a completely, yeah. I was fixated on this piece. I couldn't stop rereading it.
Well, I'll have to look it up. I haven't read it, but this really resonates. I mean, it's all about him. I mean, this is one sick puppy, man. And we have not seen anything like this, certainly in our lifetimes, and maybe not even back. Maybe Andrew Jackson was like this. I'm not sure, but this is. It's not just him. It's also the fact that he is enabled by people like Mitch McConnell and others in the Republican Party. When you think about the Nixon era, the Republicans ultimately broke ranks. I mean, they were getting worried. But Nixon was a different character. First of all, Nixon was smarter than Trump. And I don't mean more manipulative. I mean, he was just more intelligent than Trump. And he was very manipulative, but more calculating. And with Trump, we're dealing with the proverbial loose cannon. But his enablers are complicit. and should never be forgiven for this.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.